You now have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Secretary General Ms. Marta Kukuk, Honorable Mr. President of the General Assembly, Mr. Jonas Baudet, Honorable student officers, dear Deputy Consul General at U.S. Consulate General Abigail Greenwald and Mr. Stephen Montero, dear Dr. Bremer and Mrs. Vos for the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, dear Captain Breuer for the Bundeswehr, dear Mrs. Schröder for the Hanseatic City of Rostock, dear Maria Renata Fredvos representing the school authorities, dear delegates, directors and guests, dear Matthias Breitkopf, the man to make a difference, and last but not least, dear godmother of BALMUN, Regine Koch. To all of you, a very warm welcome on the occasion of the ISG's BALMUN Conference 2024. Apart from the inspiring teachers on board, my special thanks go out to the senior BALMUN staff who, amidst their own high school exams and term papers, have prepared another inspiring conference. However, I am grateful to every single member of BALMUN staff and all the partners involved who have invested and continue to invest hard work and uncountable hours to rock this event. As the head of school, I could not be prouder to have students and teachers like those who make BALMUN happen. And I am sure on behalf of their students, I can say thank you to all those teachers from outside our school who have prepared their delegates and shares consistently over the last months, who have organized travel and are an inspiration themselves. Hello to all new delegates to BALMUN, and thank you to all our regulars who have seen this conference grow and who keep supporting this unique and special event in Rostock. I am proud to say that this year not only our American friends from JFK have made the difficult journey from Berlin to Rostock, but also a group of students and their teacher from U32 High School in Montpelier, Vermont, USA, flew in for BALMUN. Thank you all for being here. Dear delegates, love your neighbor as yourself. It's one of the strongest of Jesus' messages from the Bible. And yet we find the same phrase as one of the strongest mitzvah in the Torah. The Hindu writings teach, this is the sum of duty, to not unto others what you would not have them to do to you. The Quran says, do good to parents, kinsfolk, orphans, those in need, neighbors who are near, neighbors who are strangers, the companion by your side, the wayfarer you meet. Even in the Holy Gospel of the Church of the Spaghetti Monster, you will find one of their 8 commandments. I'd really rather you didn't do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But I must admit, this commandment then diverts into something as explicitly sexual, and it's not time for that right now and here. This enumeration, however, could be continued and will finally result in the mentioning of the so-called golden rule that relates to all the big world religions. Treat others the way you want to be treated. These principles are old. They are simple. It feels as if all we need to do is to think before we act, to act in kind and gentle ways, to see our neighbors as a vital part of ourselves. And here we are, stating with this year's conference's title that we indeed live in a polarized world and have to admit that this perspective of the world can so easily be broken down to our personal life, our school, our city, and our people. Polarization is so much more than just having different positions and points of views. Polarization results in people demanding that only their position is valid, and all attempts to challenge this position will be attacked, verbally, physically, aggressively. You just need to have a look at our local streets right now. All those posters that are up for the upcoming elections, a highlight of democracy. People who are sticking their necks out for democracy, entering the so-called competition of opinions. Have a look and find out how many of those posters have already been destroyed, have been sprayed graffiti upon, commented with insults. Politicians and their teams have been attacked while putting up those posters. The intensity of this is remarkable and a sign of the ongoing polarization even in our communities. We then look at world politics and must realize that after 2 years of relating to the Russian aggression on Ukraine and the polarization this has caused in the world, this year's opening speech must relate to yet another ongoing and brutal conflict, the Gaza-Israel conflict. Again, the mechanism of polarization instantly hit after October the 7th. Demonstrators, politicians, so-called influencers, people everywhere thought it to be necessary to state their ultimate position, either pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. Many of them immediately demanding the territorial, if not complete, extinction of the other. And as much as the implications of the conflict, the terrorist attack and the consequent war are polarized implications, the only solution is to love your neighbor as yourself. Where, if not in Israel and Palestine, can the need be bigger to love your neighbor, to put yourself into the position of the others, to grant them the same rights you want to be granted, to find the peace you need so dearly in giving peace to the others, to stop counting the numerous deaths this unbelievably tragic conflict has caused over all those years on all sides. Start counting the lives you save from the moment you make peace. There's no other option justified by humanity, human and religious law. Be not mistaken. There are forces stronger than the individual. While governments and companies are pointing at the people and organizations to be the change they want to see in others, geostrategical and monetary interests of those who make money with conflicts and their aftermaths, who want to strengthen their domestic political position at the expense of other countries and people, have always and will always fire up conflicts, not as a way to love their neighbors as themselves, but to strengthen their own position as much as possible. Be not mistaken. Some of these forces will make themselves be heard throughout this conference. Some of them will want you to make your decisions based upon the picture they create of a world they benefit from most. However, honorable members and delegates of the General Assembly, be aware that your presence here at the highest, most important and complete neighborhood meeting can make a difference and will so make a difference for you if you will be able to acknowledge, listen to, empathize with your neighbor. When you will vote upon resolutions these days, be reminded that the room between two poles is a space called compromise. Be aware that those compromises must live up to your and your neighbor's demands, but also to those of your children and your grandchildren and your neighbor's children and grandchildren, to those of Mother Earth and all the creatures on it. At times, you will find it hard to walk the road untaken, to seek those compromises outside your comfort zone. The great philosopher Frank Zappa once said, "Without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible." Dear delegates and guests, why not start progress, start depolarizing right now and here, by looking at those neighbors around you. Do that now. Look at your neighbors around you and say, "I love you."
Thank you, Mr. Riemer, for your warm welcome and inspiring speech. Please accept this token of our appreciation. We are also thankful for Eva Maria Kröger, the mayor of Rostock and this year's conference patron. Unfortunately, she can't be here today due to her busy schedule. Therefore, she prepared a little greeting video which will be shown now.
Dear participants of the 16th BALMUN Conference, dear students, our world is changing. Our world is in imbalance. You can see that. Dissatisfaction is growing. We are facing so many challenges that we sometimes feel powerless, don't we? The mistrust is great. Outrage and anger at the lack of structural change, violence, abuse of power, discrimination, they all are set against the demand for freedom and autonomy and justice. The climate crisis, the war in the Ukraine, and the growing legal pressure in Europe and beyond its borders are at the center of global discourse. In addition, we are still coming up with terms with the consequences of the coronavirus pandemic. We are looking anxiously at the USA, at the upcoming presidential elections, and the continuing flow of refugees caused by ongoing international conflicts. We live in polarized worlds. We recognize this, among other things, in the numerous existing social conflicts and social movements. The question we need to ask ourselves here is whether polarization poses a threat to social cohesion and democracy, or whether it is also a necessary component of social change. On the one hand, polarization processes can lead to new perspectives, provide orientation, strengthen participation, and demand transparency. On the other hand, polarization can intensify inequalities and radicalize opinions and actions, of course. Polarization can drive social division. You probably all have smartphones. Of course you have. You are connected there with your friends and your family. You use social media, I guess. Perhaps you also sometimes allow yourself to be overwhelmed by all the flood of information. As wonderfully simple as communication has become thanks to digitalization, the social web in particular promotes the emerge of new alliances. But living in the social web means that you can live in a bubble. And the social web can lead to the obscuring of reality. Because we forget to think outside the box, we lose the foresight. We need to shape a better future. The fact that you are taking part in the BALMUN conference shows that the world is more than just a small box for you. I was once a student at this school too. I graduated from the Goethe-Gymnasium in 2002. Yes, I know that's very long ago. BALMUN didn't exist at that time, even though I would have liked it and I would have loved to take part. It is a fantastic font because it gives young people the opportunity to talk about political issues that are of great importance in today's world. Because young people engage in political debates and learn to confidently express their own opinions. And your opinion is important. You can be loud, you should be loud. At the end, I'm very much looking forward to the results of the 16th BALMUN conference, to your solutions and to your answers. Always remember, we can achieve a lot if we work together. I wish you a lot of fun at the conference, controversial debates, of course, and great discussions. Enjoy your time.
We thank Eva Maria Kröger for her kind words and are grateful to have her as our patron. Our next speaker is the Deputy Consul General, Abigail Greenwald. We had the honor of listening to the Deputy Consul General speak at the last year's conference and are thrilled to have her here today. Before becoming the Deputy Consul General in 2023, she worked for the Office of Central European Affairs in Washington, D.C., the German Council for Foreign Relations, and did an internship in the Foreign Relations Committee of the German Bundestag. After the speech, you have time to ask questions. Ms. Abigail Greenwald, you now have the floor.
Dear Dr. Riemer, dear students from all over the world, it is a great honor to speak with you today. In these times of global challenges and crises, Our collaboration and commitment to defending our shared values are more essential than ever. By working together, we can navigate these difficulties and build a more stable and prosperous future for all. And the United Nations is the most ambitious institution humanity has ever created for working together across borders. The United Nations was founded in San Francisco at the end of World War II by countries committed to preventing past mistakes and to establish new ways to avoid conflict. Over the decades, the UN has expanded in scope, purpose, and impact. By continually improving, we can meet the changing needs of our time. Global conflicts have been reduced. Development gains have lifted millions out of poverty. Innovations in global health have improved lives worldwide. Trade, communication, science, nutrition, and many other priorities have benefited from multilateral tools. U.S. leadership at the United Nations and other international organizations is crucial for their direction, transparency, and accountability. And the United States takes our leading role very seriously. We must find compromise and consensus among nations to confront global challenges, such as the climate crisis. The United States remains committed to human rights and the rule of law. As malign actors, authoritarians, and new technologies threaten to disrupt our societies, we must lead to ensure stability and prosperity. Every day, we must confront new challenges and find solutions. The current conflict in the Middle East is a humanitarian crisis and threatens our economic and political security. Our goal is not simply to stop the war. We are working to break the cycle of unceasing violence, advance an enduring peace, and ensure Israel's security with a path toward creating an independent Palestinian state. The talks are progressing, and we remain hopeful. A peace deal is essential to release hostages, provide more humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza, and achieve a longer-term ceasefire. It would save lives on all sides. In Ukraine, we are successfully isolating Putin's Russia through our steadfast commitment to democracy. More than 50 countries have provided critical support for Ukraine's forces. Ukrainians are at the forefront of the fight for democracy, a fight that we are leading at the United Nations. As we work to counter Russian aggression in Ukraine and manage the Middle East crisis, we are also handling our relationship with China. The United States competes with China across many dimensions. We are working to manage that competition responsibly. We are intensifying diplomacy to reduce the risk of miscalculation. We are not looking for confrontation or conflict, and we are working together with China on issues such as the climate crisis. In the face of all these challenges, under President Biden's leadership, the United States is not turning inward. The United States and our partners are working closely for a world that is free, secure, and prosperous. Vice President Kamala Harris emphasized the dangers of U.S. isolationism in February at the Munich Security Conference, which I attended. She advocated for unity among allies, and a large delegation of members of U.S. Congress from both parties were there to show their commitments to our alliances. Only by strengthening multilateral cooperation can we create a more resilient world. As a matter of strategic interest, the United States and its allies are stronger together. Our deep connection with partner nations spans every sector and strengthens the bridges we have built over generations. And a key institution in all of this is the United Nations. In this spirit of cooperation and shared values, you are the future of multilateral relations between our countries. By collaborating and exchanging ideas with different nations at BALMUN, you gain a deeper understanding of them. You can find common ground and shared goals. Your teamwork trains you in real-life problem solving. You play a crucial role in the democratic process. Through active participation, you become politically engaged and further develop these important relationships. You learn the importance of dialogue, compromise, and collaboration in addressing challenges that transcend national borders. The friendships and connections you build here can form the foundation for future international cooperation. These relationships are vital. They remind us that despite our differences, we share a common humanity and a collective responsibility. Collaboration is crucial, especially in times of conflict. Dozens of countries came together to deny Russia much of the technology needed to conduct its brutal war of aggression. Through this effort, we've built new bridges among our allies in Europe and the Indo-Pacific. Autocratic countries are trying to dismantle our strong network of institutions and standards to create a system that only benefits them. Their vision of the world does not include transparency, free press, free civil society, open markets, or democratic practices. The United States, the European Union, NATO, and other international partners need to work together even harder to defend all our progress. As we face these challenges, NATO's role becomes increasingly important. And I'm mentioning NATO specifically because of where we are and what this conference is, the Baltic Model United Nations. NATO has recently welcomed two exceptionally capable new members, Sweden and Finland. This puts where we are now, on the Baltic Sea in Rostock, right in the middle of an improved NATO. We know many new challenges have emerged: a growing climate crisis, cyber attacks, and disinformation, problems that would have been unimaginable to NATO's architects. The alliance is meeting these threats by adapting together, as we always have. This year, we celebrated NATO's 75th anniversary. Our defensive alliance has never and will never have designs on the territory of any other country. NATO has deterred enemies and defended territory. But the alliance's success is measured by all the ways our citizens have used their security and freedom to improve their lives. No wonder democracies make great sacrifices to join this alliance. Nations far beyond the transatlantic region are striving to deepen their partnership with NATO. Over the past 3 years, we've enhanced our deterrence and reinforced our eastern flank. We've also ramped up investments in our defense industrial capacity and launched a new strategic concept. This work will continue at the Washington Summit in July. Returning to your role in all this, over the course of this conference, I want you to reflect on the opening words of the UN Charter. We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, and to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women, and of nations large and small. As we continue to uphold these principles, let us strive to build a world that reflects the values that we hold dear. By fostering international cooperation and reinforcing our commitment to peace, justice, and human rights, we can create a brighter future for all nations. I wish you a wonderful experience. Please enjoy this exchange. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for your insightful and thought-provoking speech. We appreciate your time and effort. We now have time for 3 questions. Please raise your placard or hand and wait until a member of staff approaches you with a microphone.
Thank you very much for your speech. I thought it was very interesting. You mentioned a lot about allies of nations, like for NATO and the EU. How do you think that these organizations of multiple nations that you mentioned could help decrease polarization in our world? As we heard in the speech before yours from the mayor of Rostock, that polarization can be both a positive and a negative thing. How do you think these international institutions can help to either make polarization a positive thing or to combat it in the event that it is in fact negative?
Thank you for the question. I would say that sort of as the mayor said, polarization and working together sort of starts at home. So when we talk about working with entities such as NATO or the EU, there's already so much that goes on behind the scenes to come to a consensus, to come to agreed positions that by the time it gets to sort of the world stage where, you know, you're looking at NATO working with the Indo-Pacific, or you're looking at other countries working with the EU, that you are already in a position of reaching consensus. And so if we look at this way of moving up to where there is this emphasis to drive, to find consensus, I feel like that's how we're able to get away from these extreme opinions and sort of come together for sort of the larger benefit.
Well, thank you for a very insightful and very interesting speech. I just wanted to ask how you think the international community can effectively defend human rights in countries that are becoming increasingly isolationist and do not necessarily recognize the decisions of the international community with like the ICC and the ICJ.
Thank you. I think that's a really important question, particularly with what we've seen happening now throughout the world. I think engagement is crucial. I think making sure that we have the fora such as the United Nations, such as through all the organizations of the United Nations to encourage cooperation will help ensure that that is an attractive goal for all countries involved. You know, we see that for China, for example, which is not a democratic country, where people do not have the right to vote, where people do not have always the freedom of speech, where do those students from China want to study? They want to study in the United Nations, or sorry, in the United States, and they want to study in Europe. And as we increase those people-to-people ties, my opinion is that we will sort of help shape the next generation to work for further changes in their own country.
First of all, thank you for your speech. It was very inspiring. We believe that a lot of people unfortunately lost their trust in the government due to the COVID pandemic and then like the Ukrainian-Russia war. And we believe that the trust into the government is an important part for the resolution or for to get rid of the polarization in the world. How can governments get that trust back? Do you have an idea?
That is an incredibly important question, and if I knew the answer, we would, yeah. I would say that encouraging openness of thought, of encouraging access to information that is true is really important. We've heard from multiple people about how dangerous disinformation can be, and social media certainly can play a part in that. But by ensuring that a well-educated population has access to information, I think is a major step.
Thank you, Mrs. Greenwald, also for your willingness to answer our questions. Your speech has provided important perspectives that will surely accompany us in the coming days. Please accept this token of our appreciation. Now I'm pleased to introduce our next keynote speaker, Vanessa Voss. Vanessa Voss has played a big role in many international projects regarding sustainable development and social innovation. Moreover, she is a member of the Young Foreign Policy Working Group of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Furthermore, she is a research associate and doctoral candidate at the University of the Bundeswehr Munich and an associated member at the Institute for International Law of Peace and Armed Conflict Law Bochum. This commitment to creating solutions in our polarized world provides a good foundation for the flourishing of the debates. Vanessa Voss, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction, dear Secretary General, dear Deputy Secretary General, and dear President of the General Assembly. Also young delegates, organizers, and guests. 5 years ago, I had the honor to participate myself in the Model United Nations Conference. At BALMUN, Dresden, 2019, I represented Estonia in the Disarmament and International Security Committee, DISEC. We debated topics like cybersecurity and the role of private military companies. Despite the complexities of diplomacy, our discussions highlighted the importance of dialogue among nations. After days of intense discussions, I know that feeling, we have agreed on a common way forward. Today, these issues remain relevant and underscore the necessity of ongoing diplomatic efforts to find solutions to global challenges. Hence, despite all pitfalls of diplomacy, discussions among nations will never end and will always be part of a solution. However, today, as we gather here in Rostock, we stand on the precipice of a new era, a Zeitenwende, as it's known in German, a pivotal moment in history that will shape the course of action in world politics for years to come. The events of February 24 in 2022 marked not only the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but also a seismic shift in the geopolitical landscape and for diplomacy as such. A wake-up call that jolted us out of our complacency and forced us to confront the harsh realities of power politics in the 21st century. As we gather here to reflect on these momentous developments and the critical problems that wait to be resolved by means of diplomacy, I invite you now to join me on a journey of introspection, analysis, and most importantly, action. So, in the wake-up call of the invasion, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz addressed the Bundestag in a speech that would come to be known as the Zeitenwende speech. He spoke of the urgent need to confront the Russian aggression head-on and to rebuild German defense capabilities. He announced plans to allocate 100 billion euros, take care, in German it's only 100 Milliarden, for defense spending and committed to ensuring that Germany would invest more than 2% of its GDP annually in defense. For those American colleagues, this might not seem a lot compared to your spending, but this is actually a significant departure from the years of neglect and underinvestment that had left the military in a state of disrepair. However, as we know by now, the commitment beyond the so-called Sondervermögen of 100 billion euros of 2% defense spending will not be met in the years to come. 100 billion euros are already planned for future investments, so there's not a lot left. So let us not be under any illusions. The road to rebuilding military capabilities will be long and arduous. It will require not only more financial investment, but also fundamental rethinking of defense posture and strategic priorities. It will require to confront uncomfortable truths about past failures and to embrace a new, more realistic approach to security, one that is grounded in cooperation, deterrence, and resilience. You might ask now, why are you talking so much about security? We are here to talk about polarization, peace, the United Nations. Let us be assured that security endeavors do not stand contrary to the legitimate aim of peace. The UN Charter always talks about peace and security. Article 1.1 talks about the aim, quote, to maintain international peace and security, and to that end, to take effective collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats to peace, and for the suppression of acts of aggression or other breaches of the peace, and to bring about, by peaceful means and in conformity with the principles of justice and international law, adjustment or settlement of international disputes or situations which might lead to a breach of the peace. The UN Charter is henceforth not inherently pacifistic. It recognizes that in situations of legitimate self-defense, or with the authorization of the Security Council, military force may be employed. Therefore, peace and security are invariably intertwined, representing two facets of the same coin. However, as we navigate this new geopolitical landscape, we must acknowledge the failures of the past and learn from them. The era of unipolar dominance has given way to new actors joining the power stage, where in addition to new centers of might, non-state actors wield unprecedented influence, and technological advancements have reshaped the nature of warfare. The invasion of Ukraine has demonstrated the devastating power of hybrid warfare, from cyber attacks to disinformation campaigns and all of that underscored the importance of investing in capabilities to encounter these evolving threats. But let us also recognize that security is not just about military might. It is about diplomacy, economic strength, and the resilience of democratic institutions. It is about building bridges with allies and partners, strengthening international institutions, and upholding the rule of law. It is about fostering a culture of preparedness and vigilance, where every citizen plays a role in safeguarding the nation's security and peace. So where do we go from here? How do we chart a course forward in this uncertain, polarized world? I believe the answer lies in a realistic and pragmatic approach to foreign and security policy, one that is guided by states' interests and values, but also attuned to the complexities of the modern world. First and foremost, we must reaffirm the commitment to collective security in legitimate help of attacked nations. We must strengthen alliances and partnerships that build on the foundations of the United Nations Charter and work together with allies to address common challenges and threats. But nations must also be prepared to act independently when necessary, to defend their nation's interests and uphold their values according to the principles of the UN Charter. Moreover, countries must invest in their capabilities and technologies of the future, from cyber defense to artificial intelligence, and ensure that the military is prepared to meet the challenges of the 21st century in order to defend our common values of the United Nations. Despite geopolitical tensions and difficulties with arms control and disarmament in these uncertain times, the importance of the United Nations cannot be overstated, particularly in the context of international peace and security. Throughout history, the UN has played a pivotal role in preventing conflicts, resolving disputes, and promoting cooperation among nations. Nowadays, those success stories have become a bit less present in our thinking, which is why we should recall them. One of the most significant historical moments demonstrating the importance of the UN occurred during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. As tensions between the US and the Soviet Union escalated over the placement of Soviet missiles in Cuba, the world stood on the brink of nuclear war. It was through diplomatic efforts of the UN, particularly through the back-channel communication and negotiations facilitated by Secretary General U Thant, that a peaceful resolution of the crisis was eventually achieved. The UN provided a forum for dialogue and negotiation, helping to diffuse one of the most dangerous confrontations of the Cold War era. Another landmark moment in the history of the United Nations was the end of apartheid in South Africa. The UN played a crucial role in mobilizing international pressure and sanctions against the apartheid regime, highlighting the moral and ethical imperative of ending racial discrimination and oppression. The adoption of resolutions condemning apartheid and the imposition of economic and diplomatic sanctions contributed to the eventual dismantling of the apartheid system and the transition to democracy in South Africa. The UN stance against apartheid demonstrated the commitment to human rights and equality, and inspiring similar movements for justice and liberation around the world. Additionally, the United Nations has been instrumental in providing humanitarian assistance and promoting development worldwide. Through agencies such as UNICEF, the World Food Programme, and the United Nations Development Programme, the UN has delivered life-saving aid to millions of people affected by conflicts, natural disasters, and poverty. The UN's effort in providing humanitarian relief, promoting sustainable development, and advancing human rights have made a tangible difference in the lives of countless individuals and communities, underscoring its indispensable role in addressing global challenges. In sum, the UN stands as a beacon of hope and solidarity in a world often plagued by conflict and uncertainty. From preventing nuclear war to champion human rights and fostering development, the UN has been at the forefront of efforts to rebuild a more peaceful, just, and sustainable world. As we confront the complex challenges of the 21st century, the importance of the UN as a forum for cooperation and collective action cannot be overstated. Let me now turn to another region of war that has already been mentioned, the Middle East. The conflict between Israel and Palestine is deeply entrenched and multifaceted issue that requires nuanced understanding and empathy for all parties involved. While it is crucial to advocate for the rights and aspirations of the Palestinian people, it is equally important to recognize and affirm the legitimacy of the security concerns of the State of Israel, in particular after the terrible atrocities committed by Hamas on 7th October 2023, and thereafter. Until today, more than 100 hostages remain in the hands of a brutal terror organization. The Jewish people have a long and rich history of resilience, creativity, and contribution to human civilization, and the State of Israel serves as the only safe harbor for Jews around the world. Moreover, Israel has demonstrated a commitment to peace and coexistence repeatedly in the past. From the historic peace agreements with Egypt and Jordan to the Oslo Accords and the Arab Peace Initiative, Israel has shown a willingness to make painful compromises for the sake of peace and security in the region. Taking this into account, it is essential to unequivocally condemn all forms of anti-Semitism, bigotry, and discrimination directed at Jews around the world. Anti-Semitism, whether in the form of hateful rhetoric, violence, or discrimination, is a reprehensible and abhorrent phenomenon that has no place in a civilized society. At the same time, Israel obviously must respect the rules of international humanitarian law in its operations in Gaza. It is allowed to criticize ways of warfare. What is not morally sound is to use legal terms as a mean of fighting warfare, so-called lawfare. To call Israelis' operations a genocide, which legally speaking requires intention to destroy the population, is something that cannot be proved right now, which is, by the way, also not part of the ongoing ICC investigation. Bless you. As we work towards a peaceful resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, let us reject anti-Semitism in all its forms and reaffirm the commitment to mutual respect, understanding, and dialogue. Let us reaffirm the progress that has been made with UN resolutions and accords in the past, not least with the Abraham Accords between Israel and Morocco, Bahrain, Sudan, as well as the UAE, and almost with Saudi Arabia, that underpin at least the possibility for peace in the Middle East. By embracing the principles of tolerance, empathy, and reconciliation, we can rebuild a future where Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side in peace and security, free from the shadow of hatred and prejudice. Let me now turn back to the European war. Amidst the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia, the United Nations remains a critical actor in seeking a peaceful resolution and upholding international law. Wars end at the negotiation table, not on the battlefield. Thus, the UN might play a crucial role soon to come to resolve the conflict. The UN serves as a platform for international condemnation of actions that violate international law and undermine peace and stability in the region. Resolutions adopted by the General Assembly and the Security Council have affirmed the principles of territorial integrity, non-intervention, and respect for human rights, sending a clear message to all parties involved that their actions will not go unchallenged. Thus, the UN plays a vital role here again in the Ukraine-Russia war by providing a platform for diplomacy, mediation, and humanitarian assistance. As the conflict continues to take a toll on the people of Ukraine and threaten regional stability, the UN's commitment to finding a peaceful resolution remains unwavering. By upholding the principles of international law and promoting dialogue and cooperation, the UN offers hope for a brighter future for the people of Ukraine and the region as a whole. At the end of this speech, let me say this. The Zeitenwende is upon us, and it is up to us to seize the moment and shape the course of history. The invasion of Ukraine was a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the importance of vigilance. But the Zeitenwende is not just about our response to external threats. It is also an opportunity, in fact, for introspection and self-reflection. It is a chance for all of you here to reassess the priorities and reconsider the place in the world you want to have. It's a moment to ask ourselves what kind of international community we want to be and what kind of legacy we want to leave for future generations. In the face of adversity, we have a choice. We can retreat into isolationism and nationalism, or we can embrace cooperation and solidarity. We can build walls and barriers, or we can tear them down and build bridges instead. We can succumb to fear and division, or we can stand united against tyranny and oppression. The Zeitenwende demands courage and resilience from each and every one of us. It requires us to confront our fears and overcome our differences. It challenges us to be bold and visionary, to imagine a future that is better than the present, and to work tirelessly to make that vision a reality. But let us not underestimate the magnitude of the task before us. The road ahead will be long and difficult, and there will be many obstacles along the way, also during those days you're discussing here. We will face setbacks and disappointments, and there will be a time when it feels like the challenges are insurmountable. But you should not lose hope. We must not give up into despair. We must remember that we are not alone, that we stand together, united in our determination to build a better world for ourselves and for future generations. So let us roll up our sleeves and get to work. Let us harness the spirit of solidarity and cooperation that has always been the hallmark of the United Nations. Let us be guided by the values of freedom, democracy, and human rights that have always inspired us. Together, we can overcome any challenges. Together, we can shape the course of action. Together, we can embrace the Zeitenwende and build a future that is brighter and more hopeful than we have ever imagined. And Model United Nations conferences like BALMUN play a significant role in achieving exactly this aim. These simulations offer a unique platform for you, students, to engage in real-world diplomacy, debate global issues, and develop essential skills such as negotiation, critical thinking, and public speaking. I can remember the time for me 5 years ago, and I do remember that a key benefit, obviously, of participating in a Model United Nations conference is the opportunity for you to gain first-hand experience in international relations and diplomacy, to find future ideas for your career, your studies, as I continue to study international relations, for instance. By assuming the role of delegates representing different countries, participants immerse themselves in the complexities of global politics and learn to navigate diverse perspectives and interests. Moreover, MUN conferences provide a forum to own your communication and negotiation skills. Speak up. Through debates, resolutions, and diplomatic negotiations, you learn to articulate your positions, build consensus, and find diplomatic solutions to complex problems. These experiences are invaluable for developing effective leadership and teamwork abilities. Additionally, MUN fosters a deeper understanding of global issues and encourages you to become active global citizens. By researching and discussing topics ranging from climate change, human rights, security and development, participants gain insights into pressing global challenges and explore potential solutions. If you indeed enjoy, and I'm quite sure you will, your delegate experience here, I invite you all to become perhaps a member of the United Nations associations, such as here in Germany, the Deutsche Gesellschaft für die Vereinten Nationen, where I'm a board member of. With us, you can indeed deepen your UN expertise and remain connected to the MUN community. And with that, I wish all of you, young delegates, fruitful discussions, strong endurance, and ideas for future cooperation. Thank you.
Please raise your placards or hand, and a member of the staff will hand you the microphone.
Hello, and thank you for your speech. As you are really knowledgeable about this, I have a question. And my question is, in the first part of your Rede, ich komme Rede, you talked about how weapon can bring peace. And I wanted to ask how a weapon can bring peace if the only time you ever rose our weapons was in the event of a war, and we can only rose them in the event of a war. Doesn't that not really work together?
Did I understand correctly? Sorry, it's not that clear. How weapons can provide peace?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for your question. That's actually a very good one, and I asked myself this questions many times too. And I think when I was your age, I was far more critical about this question than I'm right now. Because I think exactly the Zeitenwende showed us that although all of us want to live in a world where we don't have nuclear weapons, where we don't need to possess weapons, it is not really realistic. Why? Because there are regimes and authoritarians like Russia. And if you look at Ukraine and the atrocities being committed there day after day, the Ukrainians don't have another chance than using weapons to defend themselves. And that's actually the priority that Europe and the world community as such should have. Because if you don't have weapons in Ukraine, Ukraine will be part of Russia, and the atrocities, sexual violations, and all of that will continue if Russia has the power and the weapons to continue as such. That's why I would say, you know, I'm also a big fan of disarmament and discussions of stability and lessen the amount of weapons we have worldwide. I'm just saying that now, during those geopolitical times, it's not the right time for Germany, for instance, to say, okay, let's reduce the amount of weapons. Why? Because otherwise we won't be able to defend our great values. We are celebrating 75 years of the German Basic Law right now. And the German Basic Law needs to be defended because there are obviously enemies that do want to contradict our constitution. And they come from inside and from outside. This is why weapons are eventually a last resort, nothing we want to use, nothing we want to use actively in an act of aggression, but just as part of self-defense. And we can trust in that by having the basic law, by having a Bundeswehr that is really responsible, and like that, although I don't like it, as you probably do neither, weapons are part of these days we're living in right now.
First of all, thank you for your speech. I find it very, very honorable for you to mention the victims of war in Ukraine and the hostages in Israel. I just have a question, why you find it hard to condemn Israel's action in killing more than 40,000 people in Palestine, and to your answer to the other delegate's question where you recognize the need for weapons in defense, for example, in Ukraine against the Russian aggression. Why is that? Why is it difficult to look at it the same for the Palestinian people who may use weapons to defend themselves for the decades-long aggression from Israel?
Thank you very much for this important point. I did mention, obviously, of course, Israel's responsibility to respect international humanitarian law. And I've studied international humanitarian law, and I continue to study that. And I can assure you that there's no war where at all times international humanitarian law is respected. And you're right, probably Israel is committing some sort of neglect of international humanitarian law. And I totally understand and respect what Palestinian peoples must suffer. The amount of numbers are extremely high, and I condemn all of that. But at the same time, we must always ask, what could be another option for Israel to continue? You're right that there shouldn't be an exceeded number of civilians being dead. But in the case of Palestine, you do have Hamas as a terrorist organization. And I've been to Israel many times. And Gaza is a very, very complex issue. If there was a clear fight on an unpopulated area where Hamas would confront the IDF, that would be the ideal case. That is how you should fight warfare. That is what a responsible army would do. They would have a fight, army between army. What Hamas is doing instead, it's hiding also below UN buildings. It's hiding below hospitals and below civilian institutions. That is why it makes it so hard and so complex to comply with the rules of international humanitarian law. At the same time, perhaps the respect could be higher. You might be right. I just wanted to highlight that what's going on in Gaza is not a genocide. And I think we should all agree to that it's not a genocide what is happening there, because the intention of Israel is not to kill as many Palestinians. The intention is to defend them against Hamas and to kill as many Hamas terrorists as possible. And that's a sheer difference.
Thank you again for your interesting speech and for taking the time to respond to all of the questions. Your speech has provided us with helpful information which will benefit us throughout the debates. Please accept this token of our appreciation. Our next speech will be delivered from the President of the General Assembly, Jonas Baudet. Jonas has helped us throughout the conference preparation, and we are grateful to have him as our President of the General Assembly. Jonas, you now have the floor.
I've prepared a couple of questions today that I'll ask you. It's one question for each of the pillars of this year's conference theme, promoting peace, progress, and prosperity in a polarized world. Here's how we'll do it. I'll ask the question, and then everyone will raise their hand for the answer they think is correct. I'll give you the answers at the end. Here's the first question on peace. Between 2011 and 2022, how many times did the US and Russia share information with each other about their nuclear weapons? So the answer options are A, 0 times, B, 25 times, and C, 25,000 times. Everyone in favor of question A, please raise your hand. Of answer A, please raise your hand. Everyone in favor of answer B, please raise your hand. And everybody in favor of answer C, please raise your hand. Great, thank you. Here's the second question on progress. In 1990, 58% of the world's population lived in low-income countries. What is the share today? A, around 9%, B, around 37%, and C, around 61%. Who thinks it's choice A, 9%? Who thinks it's choice B, around 37%? And who thinks it's choice C, 61%? The third question is on prosperity. How many of the world's 1-year-old children were vaccinated against some disease in 2022? Please raise your hand if you think it's answer choice A, less than 25%. Please raise your hand if you think it's answer choice B, 55%. And please raise your hand if you think it's 85%. So here are the answers. Here we go. For the first question on peace, it was 25,000 times. This answer surprised me as well. I thought it's 25 times. In the USA, a mere 18% of the population get this question right. Despite their many differences, the United States and Russia collaborate extensively to reduce their nuclear stockpiles. A part of these treaties are arms control. The second question on progress was pretty difficult, and I didn't see a lot of hands up for the right answer. In fact, only 3% of Germans know how much progress we made on extreme poverty. And here, question 3. Yes, the answer is C. And again, only 10% of the population get it right. Hans Gosling did extensive research into the field of misconceptions. He always told the audience, I went to the zoo last Sunday and asked the monkeys these exact questions. They answered by pure choice, and they always beat the humans. Hans Gosling put all his insights into a great book called Factfulness. He also founded a non-profit organization called Gapminder. They try to correct our worldview, and they are also the platform where I got these questions from. Hans Gosling identified 3 main areas that cause our misconceptions. The first major reason is the news. The media is sensationalist. Stories have to be rare to be read. That shifts our worldview towards the fringes. However, most people are in the middle. They are neither extremely poor nor extremely rich. It also prevents slow progress from being reported on. The fight against extreme poverty was a gradual process that took decades. It's more interesting to report on a hunger crisis in South Sudan than about how a multitude more people have been lifted out of hunger in the last 30 years. The second reason is outdated old information. Often, our worldview is based on facts that were true 10, 20, or 30 years ago. But since then, much has changed. Agreed, this problem affects older people more than younger ones. However, older people are the ones that we learn from in classrooms. The third reason is personal bias. We are all shaped by our upbringing. Many people in industrialized countries never experienced the rapid change that the world underwent. Let's take the Chinese politician Sun Chunlan. When she was born, 84% of Chinese lived in extreme poverty. That was 1950. During her lifetime, that number went down to 5%, from 84% to 5%. That's the reason why countries like China consistently answer more questions on progress correctly. Let's say this is the tool we use to fix the world's problems. Facts are the base of any solution. If you have bad input, you'll also have bad output. But facts alone are not enough. Hope is what actually turns the wrench. If you cannot hope to turn the bolt, you won't try to do it. At MUN conferences, we often focus on the problems. We rarely appreciate what we have achieved as a global community. That's demotivating. We have every reason to be hopeful. The share of the population living in extreme poverty has dramatically decreased from 1990 to 2022. From nearly 40%, it went to under 10% in just 30 years. This decrease correlated with an extreme reduction in child deaths. In sub-Saharan Africa, we went from a mortality rate of 17% to 7%. There are around 200 people in this room right now. For a group of our size, 20 more people now survive. 20 more people. That's an entire school class. That's great progress. This progress is not limited to Africa. In Southern Asia and Latin America, we made similar progress. Today, a new threat for our global progress emerges: polarization. Polarization is when you stop cooperating. That is detrimental for 3 reasons. The first, it causes conflict. Dialogue and economic integration can bring peace. That's why the European Union was founded. The second reason is it damages economic growth. Trade benefits all countries. It's one of the keys to lift many people out of poverty. With less economic cooperation, it becomes harder for poor countries to get wealthy. The third reason is that it hinders us from finding solutions to global problems. Problems like climate change cannot be solved by a single country. They affect us all, and they need a global solution to fix them. Here's the global tool again. Cooperation actually turns the bolt of global progress. It's what comes into direct contact with the problem. We prepared one final question now. In 1990, 63% of white Americans opposed to a relative marrying a black person. What is the share today? We made progress here as well. Today, that share dropped to around 14%. This is hugely impactful. Imagine a person of a different race, a person marrying a person of a different race. How would you feel when your father never accepts your spouse? Going into the conference, let us remember this tool. Let us stay factual, remain hopeful, and be cooperative. With that, I declare the 16th Annual BALMUN Conference as officially opened.
Thank you, Jonas, for your speech. Now, the BALMUN film team has prepared an opening video for the conference, which we'll be viewing in a moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, this situation is serious. We live in a polarized world. Huge amounts of information overwhelm us every day. The situation is serious. We live in a polarized world. Huge amounts of information overwhelm us every day and shape our understanding of the world and what, in our eyes, it is supposed to look like in the future. There is no doubt, media is one of the most powerful tools known to man. Powerful enough to be exploited as a destructive weapon. Many different opinions clash over and over again, resulting in a seemingly endless road of dispute, where cohesion and tolerance decline. Distrust takes the stage. During times when climate change, a problem we have been warning of for years, still remains a threat to the majority of living beings worldwide, we let hate corrupt us. Hunger, extreme poverty, and disregard of human rights in various places weaken us as humanity. While some may try to amplify the marginalized voices, others are drowning out those very voices with the roar of their guns.
Russian attacks on civilians tonight, just one day after those missiles struck a central city, killing at least 23 people, including 3 children.
International concern in Congo.
The civil war in Sudan.
Israeli troops opened fire on civilians gathered around food aid trucks in Gaza City.
Is this the future we want our kids to know? Should future generations live in destruction, illness, hatred, and suffering?
I think one thing we can all agree on is that it is our responsibility
to lay the foundation for what will soon be home of our children.
A healthy world. A world with rich ecosystems and nature to explore and conserve.
Where violent conflicts are no longer seen as an answer for political questions. A world in which peace and harmony are the only weapons of choice. I can't tell you whether creating this world is even possible, but wouldn't it be a shame not to try?
are beyond grateful for Bjarne Nerga and Jes Fischer for providing us with this great introduction to the conference. Before listening to the delegate speeches, we want to make sure that everyone is present and therefore check attendance. When your delegation is being called, please speak loud and clear.
Argentina. Please say present if you're here, the delegate of Argentina.
That's good.
Okay. Australia. Belarus. Brazil. Canada. Chile. China. Côte d'Ivoire. Cuba. Czech Republic. Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Denmark, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Egypt, France, Germany, Ghana, the delegation of Ghana, thank you, Guyana, Haiti, India, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Japan, Jordan, the delegation of Jordan, okay, Kenya, Lithuania, thank you. Malaysia, Malta, Mexico, Mozambique, yeah, thank you. Myanmar, Netherlands, Nigeria, Norway, Palestine, Republic of Korea, Russian Federation, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Syrian Arab Republic, Tunisia, Turkey, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, United States of America, Venezuela, okay, Vietnam, thank you.
Now, a selected number of delegates will deliver a speech. To decide who begins, we are pleased to announce that our keynote speaker, Abigail Greenwald, will draw a piece of paper out of this BALMUN cup. The admin should have it. And the piece of paper will have the name of the starting country on it. After that, we will continue in alphabetical order in groups of 5. The group will meet in front of the podium over there and hold their speech one after another. Additionally, there will be the right to reply. We have 2 rights of reply after each group, but the speaker will not be allowed to answer. Please keep that in mind, delegates. Please hold your applause until all the speeches are finished, or after each group of 5 has finished. Afterwards, speakers return to their seats and we will continue with the next set of speeches. The speeches should not be longer than 90 seconds. For the right of reply, raise your placard or your hand and a staff member will hand you a microphone.
Abigail Greenwald, you now have the honor to decide who begins. France, okay. We will now hear the speeches from France, Guyana, India, Israel, and Japan. Please approach the podium. Yeah. Ich kann es uns einfügen.
honorable presidents, dear chairs, esteemed guests, and fellow delegates. France is honored to be able to participate in this conference to speak on the important matter of promoting peace, progress, and prosperity in our increasingly polarized world. Not all countries are at war, yet the effects of a conflict in one region can reverberate internationally beyond the borders of warring parties. Increasingly, France has seen a rise in xenophobic incidents and terrorist threats and attacks as a result of conflicts in other parts of the world. Our obligation to advocate for peace, therefore, does not stop at our borders, just as the effects of a political polarization in one region do not cease to exist beyond said region. Distinguished delegates, we have the responsibility to translate enthusiastic promises of peace and development into comprehensive solutions, but we can only start making advancements towards progress when countries start acting according to international law and recognize the human dignity of all peoples. France looks forward to further debate on this matter with the aim of not merely encouraging peace in the terms of absence of war, but peace in terms of the presence of prosperity. We urge all delegates to remember that there cannot be any progress without peace, and that peace cannot coexist with polarization. Thank you.
All members shall refrain from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity of other member states. Quote Article 2 of the UN Charter. Located in South America, Guyana is home to a diverse culture, magnificent rainforests, and the fastest growing economy in the world. Neighboring country, Venezuela, is suffering under an autocratic regime. Venezuela's President Maduro held a vote if 2/3 of Guyana's territory should become part of Venezuela, in which he allegedly received 92% of votes. Maduro wants to annex territory and newfound wealth that rightfully belongs to us in order to further oppress his people and take away not only their, but also the freedoms of our people. A country claiming another country's territory is neither promoting peace, nor progress, nor prosperity, and it only furthers global polarization.
May clap after the group has finished.
Madam President, distinguished delegates, honored guests. We're gathered here today to discuss the matter of prime importance regarding the question of progress, prosperity, and peace in this vastly polarized world. But we do all live in this world, a world filled with cultures, ethnicities, and religions. All these things make us look so different from each other, yet we are quite literally the same species, race, and type. In this world, we are confronted with so many problems, but we do also have a lot of people to fix these problems, so we can let future generations of this earth roam free and not be obstructed by the problems that the generations before us have created. I would like to close with a quote from the famous Mr. Matsushita, founder of Panasonic. Cooperation is the most important thing within a company. If we combine each person's power, it becomes a great force. Thank you for listening.
Dear Mr. President, dear Madam Secretary General, distinguished delegates, esteemed guests, we, the Israeli delegation, would like to draw attention to a concerning trend on the rise: political radicalism. There is no denying it has been present all throughout history. However, what we have observed now is that extremist movements have been increasing in size and attempting to revolutionize. We are afraid of such movements, especially in the Middle East, where the situation is now more tense than ever. Unfortunately, another observation we have made is the fact that such radicalism is often associated with religion. We consider that to be destructive, as certain religions are very distinctive in nature to the extent where they start making international relations complicated. Furthermore, we would like to establish the duty of UN member states to keep domestic religiously motivated rebel and radical groups at bay. We are also disappointed by the general dynamic of interference in purely national, and the delegation repeats national matters that each country should tackle with its own approach. There is no justification for condemning the right of a nation to use all its available force to defend its territorial sovereignty. The delegation looks forward to fruitful debates and hopes it will find a lot of mutual common ground with other delegations present. Thank you. We yield the floor.
Mr. President, Secretary General, fellow delegates, distinguished guests and organizers, Namaste. The delegation of India is deeply honored to participate in this year's conference. Like our dearest Chief Minister, Narendra Damodar Das Modi, announced wisely on the Ministerial Conference on Counterterrorism in New Delhi, India will not rest until terrorism is uprooted. India, the biggest democracy of the world, is seriously endangered by Pakistani and Afghan terrorists, especially in the Indian region of Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan's corrupt government is supposed to be a democratic one, but where has Osama bin Laden been hiding undisturbed and effortlessly for such a long time? And where are new Islamist terrorist groups and radical separatists constantly crawling out of their holes like rats? Almost 3 years now, the Taliban, founded partly in Pakistan, are ruling Afghanistan now. Facing this disaster, India stands resolute, ever ready to fiercely safeguard freedom, democracy, and obliterate the plague of Islamic terrorism worldwide, harnessing its full nuclear force when the need arises. Because we aren't just the largest exporters of chickpeas. No, peace is the most powerful weapon of mankind, like Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our nation, said. Thank you.
The ambassadors of Myanmar, the Netherlands, Palestine, and the Russian Federation and Sierra Leone please approach the podium. We'd like to remind you to please stay within the 90-second time limit. We will need to cut you off otherwise.
Ja, dann machen wir das nächste.
Honorary Secretary, esteemed chairs, fellow delegates, distinguished guests. How can it be possible that oil and gas rings still devastate natural habitats worldwide? That microplastic pollution is growing exponentially until it has become a legitimate global threat? That human rights in conflict regions are summarily disregarded? That women and minorities are still not equally represented in government? That space pollution is ignored as a tangible threat to future mankind? That LDCs and LADCs remain the victims of social and economic exploitation? The delegation of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar greets the General Assembly on behalf of Myan Swe, feeling honored to participate in this year's BALMUN conference. Strengthening human rights, political inclusion, actions on oil and gas drilling, actions on microplastic and space pollution, and helping economically dependent countries is not only our duty, but also the only way to ensure a world of prosperity and evolution. The delegation of Myanmar looks forward to solving these globally important problems. Thank you.
Honorary Secretariat, esteemed ambassadors, distinguished delegates, dear guests, and everyone else. Dag. As the ambassador of the Netherlands, it is our greatest pleasure to stand here in front of you and hold this speech. We are once more thankful to be invited to this Assembly of the United Nations and look forward to a successful conference. But before we do start, we would like to ask you one thing. What do you think is the most pressing issue of our time? The delegates may say the war in Gaza, Ukraine, Syria, Afghanistan, the DRC. You might name the climate change, world hunger, overpopulation, gender equality, or even artificial intelligence. And you might find approval for your prioritized political crisis. Wait, did you hear the sound of that? Prioritized political crisis. Why do we need to do that? Why do we continue sorting our problems instead of solving them? Why do some embassies, some countries just forget about the old problems when new ones show up? All issues, all conflicts, all crises should be discussed until they are solved. That is why we as the Netherlands keep investing so much into one of our highest priorities, multilateral cooperation. And we urge, nay, exhort you, fellow countries who strive for a prosperous world, to do the same, to keep working until we find peace. Thank you. We yield the floor.
Nobody can terrorize an entire nation in solitude. It requires a multitude of accomplices to do so. These words, fellow delegates, are more applicable now than ever before. We are witnessing an unprecedented abuse of human rights being executed by the Israeli regime and being facilitated by many others, such as Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States, to name a few. Canada and the United States have both recently ceased armament deliveries to Israel. But why so late? The UN declared on the 16th of November through the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights that grave violations committed by Israel against Palestinians in the aftermath of the 7th of October, particularly in Gaza, point to a genocide in the making. Why did Canada then stop arms shipments in mid-March, 4 months after these findings? And why did the United States wait until early May, 6 months after this UN declaration? However, even these nations are not the only actor to blame in this conflict. Hamas also bears responsibility. They have disconnected completely from both the Palestinian people and reality by instigating the events of the 7th of October and thus which ultimately led to the reoccupation of Gaza by Israeli forces. In essence, they are a wildfire raging uncontrollably and consuming not just the landscape around them, but the very ground upon which they stand. To conclude, we must address the root cause rather than some apparent surface problem. We must seek common ground and not be misled by the lies and fabrications of nearly dictatorial regimes. Thank you.
Esteemed Secretariat, honorable chairs, dear directors, fellow delegates. As we stand at this crossroads in history, it is imperative to identify those that seek to divide us. Promoting peace, progress, and prosperity in a polarized world, a topic that has long been discussed by the United Nations, and a topic that certain states continue to preach, while in reality only driving the divide further. Where is peace when a military alliance keeps expanding, threatening other nations, while its members carelessly invade foreign countries to impose their ideology, leaving them with nothing after? Where is progress when Western states refuse to compromise and see their view as the only true way to peace? Where is prosperity when needless sanctions are imposed on all those who dare to protest these developments? Over the next 3 days, the Russian Federation asks you all to question who has truly shaped this polarized world and to not be intimidated by the dominance and righteousness of Western states, so that we might find solutions that can truly bring us forward. Thank you.
Honored Secretariat, esteemed delegates. We as a delegation of Sierra Leone are looking forward to a positive debate and exchanging of ideas on the topic promoting peace, progress and prosperity in a polarized world. Because we believe that by working together as the United Nations we can properly combat the challenges facing our planet. We had a fair part of struggle in the past, but we believe that we need to look into the future and try to prosper together, not while fighting against each other, but by helping us together toward a world where all people can have peace, live in the aforementioned prosperous world. I urge all nations to come together and face the issues we are given in this conference, while keeping in mind that not only the more powerful countries should prosper, but the less fortunate countries need to be given a chance too, to develop. We want to fight climate change, war, hunger, and many more problems. But how can all countries have the tools to succeed if not all the countries have been given equal tools? Because otherwise we cannot achieve the goals we as the United Nations vow to achieve. We believe the wealthier countries haven't taken a fair share in helping, and this needs to change. Thanks. I give the floor back to the Secretariat.
We will now entertain 2 rights of reply. The admins will pass around the microphone.
Admin, there's a right to reply in the 3rd row from Israel. Please pass the microphone.
Unless the delegation is mistaken, Israel has been directly mentioned in one of the speeches, and we would like to ask the delegation to commit to proving what they have said about the human rights violations allegedly committed by Israel.
There's a second right to reply in the back row.
Delegate of Guyana. I'm speaking as the delegate of Guyana. Does the delegate of Israel, who gave a speech, recognize the irony of their government speaking out against religious and hyper-nationalist extremism?
The next 5 speeches will be coming from Switzerland, Sweden, Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America. Please approach the podium.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, Secretariat, and distinguished guests. Switzerland is honored to be a part of the BALMUN 2024 conference and honored to be a member of the DISEC committee for the duration of this conference. There is no need to neglect the global progress made on important economic and international forums in recent years. But it remains our job to continue this undeniable progress. It is our job to continue these conversations about polarization because the effects are felt on a global scale. Polarization in our world is only promoted by isolation of communities through international crisis to global tensions and promotion of harmful social media patterns. From the war in Ukraine, the conflict in Gaza, the COVID-19 pandemic, all of these events have led to polarization becoming a barrier for unity and peace. That is why, now, more than ever, these conversations are key to promoting change for future generations. We won't get anywhere from opinions alone. Listening, communicating, and understanding all sides of the argument allows for collaborative solutions to surface. Through conversations of cybersecurity, international relations, climate change, and humanitarian rights, during this conference, it is these conversations that highlight the importance of community, of transparency, of international communication, and the significance of polarization is not combated by one country alone or one idea alone. It takes all of us to make a change. That is why we are here. Switzerland is honored to be acknowledged in these conversations and looks forward to working with other delegates during the 16th Annual BALMUN Conference to find concrete solutions to a world built on a million questions. Thank you.
The only true and sustainable prosperity is shared prosperity. Joseph E. Stiglitz. Mr. President, distinguished Secretary, fellow delegates, distinguished guests. Peace is prosperity, and through progress, prosperity can be reached. Today, more than 110 armed conflicts hamper this positive development for all states, which should be naturally guaranteed. Because of these armed conflicts, inhumanitarian social standards are caused. To overcome this detrimental situation, the Kingdom of Sweden wants to remind that we all agreed on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that includes stable human rights and fostering global innovation. Moreover, it is our responsibility to the people in the world to take actions to ensure these goals. This just can be solved by the United Nations, working on international cooperation. Therefore, we as the delegation of Sweden are looking forward to a productive conference with fruitful debates. Thank you.
Esteemed delegates, consider the Red Sea, a vital trade route connecting nations and economies. Turkey recognizes the importance of safeguarding such arteries of commerce, understanding that peace along these routes is not just a matter of security, but of economic stability and growth. Through initiatives like the Istanbul process, we have actively worked to promote dialogue and cooperation among the countries bordering the Red Sea, ensuring its continued role as a conduit for prosperity. In the realm of artificial intelligence, Turkey stands at the forefront of innovation. We understand the transformative power of technology, yet also recognize the need for ethical frameworks to guide its development. Through initiatives like our national AI strategy, we seek to harness the potential of AI while safeguarding against its unintended consequences, ensuring that progress in technology is synonymous with progress for all humanity. Furthermore, Turkey is deeply committed to environmental sustainability. Initiatives like the Istanbul Climate Change Initiative demonstrate our dedication to global environmental cooperation, recognizing that the health of our planet is inseparable from the well-being of future generations. In matters of equality, Turkey is committed. Whether through legislation promoting gender equality or initiatives to empower marginalized communities, Turkey is dedicated to building a society where every individual has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their background or identity. In conclusion, let us not merely preach the ideals of peace, prosperity, and progress, but through dialogue, innovation, environmental stewardship, and a commitment to equality, Turkey stands ready to play its part in shaping a future where these principles are not just aspirations, but the lived reality for all. Thank you.
Prestigious presidents and chairs, praised delegates and guests. Amidst the pervasive polarization plaguing our planet, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland proudly pledges its passionate pursuit of promoting peace, progress, and prosperity. With purposeful perseverance, we persist in our pursuit of global harmony, piloting the power of principled policies while providing pivotal support to beleaguered nations plagued by perturbation and pandemonium. For the profound potency of our peace promotion programs, we proffer practical and pivotal patronage to regions ravaged by strife, bestowing upon them the precious presence of peace and brotherhood. In our battle against bigotry and partition, the United Kingdom pluckily champions the prosperous path of unity, beckoning all nations to participate in our quest where peace, progress, and prosperity will prevail. Thank you.
Distinguished Mr. President, Honorable Secretary General and Deputy Secretary General, fellow delegates, dear guests. We find ourselves at a turning point where we have to decide to either keep on driving apart or to come over our differences that make out a polarized world to work on solving the many crises that make out recent international discourse. Our world is marked by sharp divides, political, economical, and social. Yet within this polarization lies the opportunity to forge stronger societies. Pursuit of happiness is the main American impulse for action, is the central factor that led to 250 years of success in building a country of free people alongside peace and prosperity. The United States of America thus should serve as an example for other countries to adapt this most successful assertive pursuit. We are offering our hands to all countries and people in this world for taking the challenges together. In order to achieve that, diplomacy and political cooperation are our most important and powerful assets. We, as the United States of America, have always been on the side of the people, on the side of democracy. Throughout our history, we have always fought the battle against those that suppress mankind in its free beauty. We have to fight this battle as a global community to achieve our goal of peace and prosperity. Thus, we are looking forward to a successful conference. Thank you.
Again, we will entertain 2 rounds of reply. A member of staff will hand out the microphone.
How can the USA talk about economic problems and offering their hands to all countries while the sanctions they're imposing on the Russian Federation have largely committed to many of these economic problems?
And furthermore, to the delegate of Switzerland, how can the delegate of Switzerland talk about just simply solving each and every problem through conversation when no conversation can undo decades of Western unwanted infiltration and intervention into the national affairs of other sovereign member states? Wouldn't you agree that simply talking does not suffice to combat the attempts of undermining the rest of the world that your allies are pursuing?
Thank you, delegates. You can now go to your seat. The last opening speeches will be delivered by Vietnam, Algeria, Australia, Chile, Cuba, and Ecuador. Please approach the podium.
Distinguished Mr. President, Honorable Secretariat and chairs, fellow delegates, and dear guests. The delegation of Vietnam feels honored to be part of this year's conference, which will expound upon promoting peace, progress, and prosperity in a polarized world. We classify this matter as one of great importance and would be more than delighted to make room for finding sustainable solutions during the following days. Simultaneously, the delegates of Vietnam would like to emphasize the gap between MDCs and LDCs that keeps on splitting us and causing conflicts with every day we do not or neglect stepping into action. The divide still lies at a concerning extent, and with that existing, achieving worldwide peace will hardly be ever possible. Because of those concerns, the delegation of Vietnam highly welcomes the upcoming debates as we value and respect the cooperation with our fellow UN members. The delegation of Vietnam is looking forward to fruitful exchanges of words and ideas. Thank you.
Honorable President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, and esteemed delegates, Algeria is very concerned about different factions in the world engaging in active competition and ongoing diplomatic incidents. LADCs should not be puppets of superpowers and need to maintain their independence. Developed countries should not meddle in LADC's politics and honor our authority and values. Nevertheless, we still see global trade and financial help as essential for prosperity for all nations. The United Nations have a responsibility in fostering cooperation. We need to make sure they do this. Global cooperation and compromises with respect for even the weakest of people are key to paving the way for a peaceful world. With many challenges facing us, we believe that we need to put our differences aside and work towards global progress, even if it means working with countries outside of traditional power blocs. Thank you.
Esteemed President, Secretary, fellow delegates, and distinguished guests. We established this institution because despite our different national interests, we share common human goals. Solving our biggest challenges requires collective effort. After the last World War, we committed to preventing such devastation from happening again. Australia, home to people from all over the world, values the wisdom of our first peoples and their ancient culture. We see the world's challenges clearly, and by listening and acting together, we can shape a better world. However, Australia acknowledges that our shared multilateral system is not meeting our commitments. We are falling behind. More people are displaced and hungry, conflicts are increasing, and the risk of nuclear weapon use is rising. Climate change is outpacing our efforts. Communities worldwide, including in Australia, are devastated by floods and fires. The Pacific Islands, just meters above sea level, are particularly threatened by climate change. Peace is crucial for progress. It is our responsibility to promote and uphold peace through diplomacy, economic development, and military deterrence. Australia has always pursued a world where disputes are settled through institutions, rules, and norms, and not power. We must work towards a world without nuclear weapons, strengthening international treaties and preventing proliferation. Australia is committed to disarmament and nuclear security. We envision a world where no country dominates or is dominated. Achieving the SDGs and ensuring peace and prosperity is up to all of us. We must listen, act urgently, and reform the international system to serve everyone better. Together we can choose shared success over shared failure. Thank you.
We, as a delegation of Chile, are grateful for the year-long support on our way to democracy and prosperity. With the generous aid of our international partners, we arose from the terrors of dictatorship and rebuilt a strong economy. So now we can help and advise other countries on the path to a brighter future. However, our history was also marked by multiple foreign interferences. States have tried for decades to occupy the mineral resources of Chile, hindering the national development and leading to a deeply rooted inequality between the Chilean citizens. We must ensure that prosperity does not equal exploitation and that peace is not achieved through war. If we truly care about the values of freedom, peace, and equality, we should be more attentive towards the unbalanced trade of cultural and economic goods. But seeing the progress we have accomplished since colonialism, Chile is optimistic towards the future. Thank you.
Mr. President, fellow delegates, distinguished guests, BALMUN has met today to promote peace, progress, and prosperity in this polarized world. And the delegation of Cuba feels deeply honored to participate in this year's conference. Allow the delegate to paint a picture of progress and sovereignty from the vibrant perspective of Cuba. As a nation that has faced adversity and challenges, we have risen with resilience and determination. Our journey towards sovereignty has been marked by unwavering commitment to our values and principles. As we navigate the complexities of the modern world, we hold steadfast to our commitment, we hold steadfast to our sovereignty and cherishing our independence and autonomy. Our progress is not measured with wealth, but by the strength of our unity and the richness of our culture. Because progress is the result of hard work, the delegation of Cuba encourages all nations to today remember the progress that has been accomplished and to not let these be in vain, but to strive to find solutions to assist each nation in reaching their full potential. Hasta la victoria siempre. Thank you.
Esteemed guests, fellow delegates, we, the delegation of Ecuador, believe that true peace is more than absence of conflict. We believe it is the presence of justice, equality, and human rights. In order to achieve this goal, we must work together and not against each other. War, fights, and threats won't build a better future, but rather destroy the present. The journey towards a better future, driven by education, technology, and international cooperation, is what we strive for. But that cannot be achieved without peace. Therefore, we encourage all of you to tirelessly work towards a world where everyone lives free from fear. Because we're all running the same marathon, but without cooperation, we can't get to the finish line. Thank you.
Thank you, delegates. We will now entertain the last two rights of reply. The admins will hand out the microphone.
How can Australia call for a world led by the rule of law when the only one punished for Australian war crimes in Afghanistan is the whistleblower David McBride, who raised attention to said war crimes? Do you see the irony?
The Russian Federation would like to ask Australia how they can talk about the negative effects of the climate change while causing them themselves by being one of the largest coal exporters worldwide.
Thank you, ambassadors. We will now continue to present our great chairs that make this conference possible. We begin with the chairs of the Security Council. Philip Harashta, Shila Petergova, and Zaya Bisbolka, please rise. This is your applause. Next, the chairs of the ECOSOC, Eric Becker, Clara Blaskovanova, and Ilian Baudet, please rise. This is your applause.
The Environmental Assembly will be chaired by Frida Katzenstein, Julie Adamo, and Dan Blodgett. Chairs of the Environmental Assembly, please rise. This is your applause. The chairs of the first General Assembly will be Magdalena Thal, Benjamin Mosseri, and Marika Šmlekova. Chairs of the GA1, please rise. This is your applause.
Next is the Social, Humanitarian and Cultural Committee, which will be chaired by Dylan Opal Singh, Giselle Bullion, and Veronika Nemechkova. Please rise. This is your applause. Next will be the chairs of the Special Political and Decolonization Committee, Ari Jorgensen, Chiara Matthews, and Marie Casalina. Please rise. This is your applause. The opening ceremony is now coming to an end. We want to thank all speakers again for their time and effort. We wish all participants fruitful debates and successful work towards a more peaceful and prosperous world. Let's make this BALMUN a meaningful and impactful experience for everyone.
Speakers, the room of your committee, and some guidance for the delegates in your program, which you can find in the folders that will be handed out to you. In order not to miss anything, you can follow the Baltic Herald on Instagram, where they will provide you with lots of information. The account is called @Baltic_Herald. They will also provide us with freshly printed editions each day of the conference. We're looking forward to that.
Furthermore, the catering team has prepared a cookie break in the hallway for us, which will be from 11:45 until 12 p.m. Then the committees will be in session. Please find yourself in your assigned rooms at 12 p.m. It is very important that you're on time. The staggered lunch break will be at 1:30 p.m.
Another announcement for the U32 students. Don't take any flags or placards with you. The conference staff will take care of that. And now we will wish you all a tasteful cookie break. Thank you.